We're back. We are back. And a lot has changed. We'll see how I look. Can't remember the last time I had a beard this big and let my hair get this crazy, but what are you gonna do? I'm gonna deal with something real quick. Sorry, it's loud. I'm currently who the fuck is calling me? No, get the fuck out of here. I'm currently re-spraying my Gore-Tex. Do you dry Gore-Tex? I don't know any of this stuff. I know it's weird. I spend a lot of time outdoors, but minutes after the garment is dry, tumble dry. Okay. What if we do? 1 second. Sorry, that's embarrassing. Not gonna hand dry. I don't have time for that shit. Sorry. Already 2 minutes in, Sam, and all you've been talking about is trying to figure this thing out. Okay. Okay, cool. Anyway, first things first, I haven't been posting at all, so this might be a bit of a longer video. I have a bunch of like little snaps and like journal entries and guitar playing and stuff like that that I will be posting kind of more en masse. I'm gonna have them bleed out on my off shift. So the plan is kind of do a bunch. I go back to well, I guess I should back up, dude. I quit my job in tech. I don't know if any of you know this, and I am now a staff backpacking guide for a wilderness therapy program, the same one that I was at when I was a kid. And through that, a lot of stuff has changed. And it's interesting to be back in a spot like that and kind of what comes up. And I'm not going to get into all that. That'll probably be, we'll kind of see those through some of the journals that I do, kind of in a shorter form. But yeah, so I work a week on, a week off. And this is the last day of my off shift. And then I'm going back tomorrow, and I'll be out there till next Tuesday. So I'm probably going to I'll have like 4 or 5 pieces of content on each platform. Probably not Snapchat, because this is a little weird, but I can post directly from my Snapchat while I'm in the field, so that's kind of fun. And I think like that's really what's changed, right? I think aside from that is the level of groundedness and presentness I have by fulfilling a purpose instead of chasing a dollar sign. I think for a long time, especially in my last relationship, like I put a lot of energy into who I was to others and not who I was for me. And a lot of that stemmed from, insecurities and a financial lack that I had felt going back to when I was a teenager, dude. I was 13, and Dad's like, gotta go get a job if you want new basketball shoes, or whatever it was, And I think through that, it didn't create a rift per se, but I think it definitely created some pieces of myself. It created energies around scarcity. And then moving and making a shift like this, I have a buddy right now who's crushing it financially. He's one of my best friends, crushing it financially and struggling to find like why he feels the way he feels. And it's because deep down our souls, and there's probably a million descriptions around this same concept, but your soul knows. And so I see people, and on the outside, especially in a place like, I'm in Park City right now, this is where mom and dad live. They're separated, but they still live up here. And it's interesting because I can see on the outside why people create that energy of, I'm doing so well, and look at all the things I have, and look at what my kid's doing, and all these things. And then deep down, I think there's a lot of misery there, and you can't hide that. Definitely not from somebody like me, dude. I have a specific nature and tenacity to see into your soul. It's, call it divine, call it whatever, call it years of having to, from a survival complex, to know what the fuck you are before maybe even you do. And not from a judgment lens, just through a natural, I see you, I'm clear, And anyway, I think the point I'm getting is your soul recognizes when and where you're lying to yourself, right? So it's really interesting, especially for me, when I come out of, a pretty intense situation around some of these teenagers, right? Where there's a lot of critical thinking going on, and then coming back into the world and hearing the same stuff from adults, or experiencing myself through some of these lies, this cognitive dissonance and these lies that I allow myself to fall into because it's easier. Now, not necessarily in the same capacity, right? I'm not hurting myself like I did when I was 16. I'm not putting anybody in harm's way, but I'm definitely, still working out the kinks there. And some of those behaviors I'm going to continue to have to work on. And I think that I feel like as humans, innately, we have that, I don't want to be ostracized. And so that's where that collectivism, I think, around money and abundance and expressing things on social media has really taken a root. It just stems from that fear of I just don't want to be alone, so I'll do what I have to do to fit in. And where that trips us up, especially when it comes to, regardless of buddies working in tech or making money and feeling unfulfilled and scared and angry at the life that they may have lived, regardless of childhood traumas, but still kind of that bleeding into your adulthood. The OnlyFans thing, right? It's deep down, these people know. And I think what the only issue with that, right? The danger, just kidding. The only, maybe I would say the difficulty in operating through a materialistic, or, I call it the 3D, right? Very earthly, we're operating from a sense of, sin's not the right word. Yeah, so just operating through that specific lens of any earthliness, right? Money, things like that. Now, there is a divine piece to all of those things, but I mean, when your fundamental basis is rooted in that, we don't have a lot of practice as humans. We don't. I fortunately do. My family does. Have practice in asking and being curious about what and how we can maybe show up better for ourselves. And that's it. But when we have this, immense deliverable, right? Millions of dollars to something that isn't soul fulfilling, right? That doesn't promote health and well-being, not just to ourselves, but to others. Now it might make your dollar sign bigger, which means you're living a more earthly and larger life there. Is that we don't have the skills and toolbox to maybe ask why or how that feels right, or why and how that doesn't feel right, or what the next step is. And it's really fascinating to witness as somebody who has taken those steps in life and has, really attempted to live a peaceful existence aside from all of that shit, dude. And it's a lot simpler. I don't think it's easy. It's definitely not easy, but it's a lot simpler than we make it out to be. In one step, especially when I ask my buddies, what do you want, truly? Now, I don't expect a 19-year-old who's completely immersed in the streaming and all that stuff and the clicks and the views and the da-da-da-da-da. I wouldn't expect them to have a super insightful answer into what is the true, what is your higher purpose on this planet. I definitely don't ask that to a 16-year-old going through the shits. But for an adult who has some critical thing, what do you want? I know what I want. And sometimes that helps. So here's a frame, right? I want to help. I want to get paid to help. That's kind of smaller, but a piece of it for sure. I want to be able to travel. I want to be able to see my parents and family as much as I want. I want to be able to go to live music. I want to play music. I want to write. I want to read. I want to do poetry. I want to spend my life with a companion, somebody that challenges me and pushes me, and that I also challenge and push, and likes to be outside. But But I think deeper than that is I want to help. You know, like I remember being so frightened for so long, and the pieces there and how to get there. And is God important? God's not important. Is this important? This isn't important. Do I pray? Do I meditate? Blah, 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 blah. At the end of the day, when we can get really, really clear on what we want, like truly. Now, I don't mean through the lens of any other this like fucking, oh, I really want a Ferrari. It's like, okay, dude, cool. But like maybe let's go a step. Like, why do you want the Ferrari? Oh, because it's a symbol that you're successful. Okay, so what you really want is to be successful. Okay, well, what does that mean? That's a broad term. I know a lot of people don't give a shit about money that are uber successful, right? I would consider myself uber successful. I really would. Coming from where I was 10 years ago to now as like, dude, I'm just me. I'm so grateful I'm me, you know, and there's always going to be changing and growing there. But that's really the question. And then the other piece of it is this shame piece, man. The shame piece is fascinating. Excuse me a moment. Yeah, alrighty, my people are going to say, Sam, you made this shift. You're such a hippie. It's like, dude, I've been a hippie since before it was cool to be a hippie, and TikTok made it cool and all that shit. I've slept on the ground more times than a lot of people. There's that ego. Hydrate or dihydrate, friends. Get your water. God, I do look like a fucking wilderness guide right now. This is great. I got my chacos on. It's awesome. The shame piece. Shame is important, you know. But with more and more frequency, I see people beating the shit out of themselves. And, like, don't get me wrong, shame is important. It's kind of one of the sacred bridges of where and when you know you fucked up is when you feel shame. Now, within reason. Right. But I think that all of us, especially some of us who are aware of these things and see people maybe living a life that we want, we've created this, I must be doing something. I must be wrong. I am wrong because I don't have that. And that's dangerous. Because the shame cycle is I feel unworthy and I'm shameful for my actions. I am unfamiliar with how to cope and deal with my shame. I will perform and do actions that are in alignment with my shame, not my highest good or highest power. And I am shameful about that. And we continue that cycle. And I bet, right, very similarly to another thing I spoke about of fear and love, is that that's fear-based. That means that there's a piece of you that is afraid of what you've done, or afraid of yourself, or afraid of what that looks like, or afraid of taking accountability for it, which can be really hard. Like the shit sandwich, right? Like that was a theme that I used when I was, going through my stuff was we all order a sandwich. Now, sometimes we order a shit sandwich from our behaviors, and you have to eat it. But eating that sucks, right? So then we're shameful about the fact that this person over here has this delicious-looking Italian sub, and I have a shit sandwich, right? Use whatever mental framing you need for that. So how do we move back? It's compassion, man. Like I was beating I had this moment in the woods where I got into it with these teenagers, and it wasn't anything major, but it was like, that's the dumbest shit I've ever heard. Here's why it's dumb. Let's look at it. But there's not a lot of, they don't want to hear it from me. They don't want to hear it from anybody. They got to hear it from themselves. But, in that light, I don't think that always occurs in a timeline that makes a lot of sense. So anyway, I'm in it with these kids, and I'm beating myself up. And, this person said, Sam, how you're communicating to yourself, is that any way you would communicate with one of these kids out there? And then, of course, my brain goes, yeah, of course. And then I thought, I was like, I don't think I would ever tell somebody that, I don't think I would ever be that hard on anybody because I have compassion for their journey. That's illuminating. So compassion can be the thing that trumps our self-shame, our self-compassion, and to build that isn't just, to Alex Hormozy's point, it's not just affirmations in the mirror. I think that's a great place to start. I think if you can start expressing ways that you do love yourself on a day-to-day, I think it can be an immaculate place to start. And aside from that, we have to do things that make us proud of ourselves, okay? I'm not talking about over-pride. I'm not talking about the knight in shining armor tromping through, look at how great and beautiful I am. I'm talking about hey, I was really proud that I showed up like that in that moment the way I needed to. Or I'm proud that my company has made the numbers the last 4 months or whatever it might be. right? But then we have to do actions that are in alignment with that. When we don't have enough backing in how, the first step has to be curious, and then let's start small. What's one little thing you could do today to maybe honor yourself? Maybe honor your journey, right? For me, I'm doing this. And just like looking, this is probably not the same experience for you guys because you're not me, but seeing myself on this camera talking about my experiences now versus 2 months ago is profound. And it's really cool to witness. And I think in that light, I just was curious, like, and then when I got curious, I needed some backing, dude. That's where God comes into all this shit. That's where the universe comes into all this shit, right? It's just, like, apologies for preaching about it, but I know a ton of people that feel really connected with the Most High right now, and the shift is occurring. You didn't think we were in end days? Keep watching, motherfuckers, dude. You'll notice. And anyway, once we become compassionate about ourselves, give ourselves just a breather and be curious about things. You can be angry, dude. My buddy is pissed. And he's like, it's all great on paper. And I don't know, and the anger. And then on the other side, we have to, there's people who say, well, look at how great your life is. Like, there's people getting blown up. And it's like, yeah, it's a really great way to kind of take away from your own experience, right? Now, yeah, that is definitely a piece that we like to embody. And maybe we're in a better headspace of, I got mad at some lady when I was in traffic. I have a car. Okay, let's look through that frame, maybe. Right? And I'm not saying that you're going to love where you're at, because you probably don't. I didn't. I hated where I was at, and I did a lot of things to cope with the true unhappiness and shame that I had exhibited around behaviors towards others, myself, like the lie I told myself, the things I had given up on, the amount of people had taken advantage of me and my graciousness and my, like I care. So like people take advantage of that. So, anyway, but the resounding conversation is the resounding conversation. The message that I'm trying to belay to you is that do a little. You're not going to change your life overnight. I blew it up because that's how Sam does it. It's just like, fuck all this shit. I'm out. And that was a whole, I had to figure out a bunch of shit and figure out my debt and all that kind of stuff. And da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. But the money has become a second piece to now I have more money than I thought I would have, right? And it's funny how things line up when you just take one step, one thing today. Do one thing today that honors your journey, that honors yourself. That might be going and getting a beer with buddies, man. I don't know. Like, obviously, if you're an alcoholic, maybe let's not do that. But when we're in these places, it's shame, bro. This I am not worthy. I am a piece of shit. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And it's not helpful. It's not helpful. I know you think it's like doing something for you, but it just isn't. And the only way to step out of it, one, we literally have to detach one thing of compassion. Like, I did that one thing, okay. Right? And we're not shameful all the time. I know some people, I was shameful for a significant amount of time. But stepping out of the shame, just for a moment. I'm just asking, could you step out of it just for a moment? What would that feel like, maybe? How would that feel for you to not be so shameful? Okay, let's explore that a bit more. And then when we explore that, okay, what's one thing maybe we could do that might allow us to be more in that compassion, that love land, right? Love land. That's great. Write that down. The fear land and the love land, baby. It's like the two wolves, which one do you feed? Should I rock like that? What do you think? Should I just straight up? I was thinking I might go back to the bandana visor combo because look at this hairline, dude. It's actually getting better, funny enough. I thought it would be getting worse with the dirty hats I wear in the woods all day, but yeah. And it's really interesting to witness, especially when I come out of this place, because these kids have been wronged and lied to their whole life. You've been wronged and lied to your whole life. And I'm sorry that it has to come through a form that you probably didn't want to see. But you've been lied to. You don't have to do that. You don't have to devote 50 years of your life chasing a dollar sign. You just don't. You just don't have to. You might want to. That's okay. Like, I got friends. They're all living in New York City. And I'm like, wow. I can't wrap my head around it, but that's not my existence. I think it's, to an extent, I think it's easier too, right? We don't like doing hard things. Hard sucks. But again, like when you give yourself that compassion, when you've been in that shame cycle, that's really hard. And I know you can do it because a lot of people do it. And then just plant a little seed of like, what could it look like? What would the best version of my life look like? Now, if you go to all I want is for me, there might be a greater conversation there around why. And how is it that how do you feel? What about that specific selfishness is important to you? How can we help others, right? Now, if your note is none of this stuff, then that's totally fine too. It can help you through that that's the best part is like, you want to be a better businessman, read Leadership and Self-Deception and get out of like why your brain, like how it's about you and how it's about others, like how it can be for others. How am I showing up for them is very different than how are they showing up for me. Does that make sense? It's a different energy completely. So like all of these things, dude, and I think the biggest thing, right, one is that we lie to ourselves that it feels a certain way or that it's supposed to feel a certain way. And my ask is that just look at it the same way I have, whether there's millions of dollars in your bank account or $20, man, you can show up as you for others every time. And maybe it's asking too much. We'll get to that. But I do believe that you will get to a spot where you don't even have to worry about the money because you will be compensated for being yourself. You've been told your whole life that isn't a thing, that what you do is going to directly influence your bank account. What you do is going to affect this. And I'm saying that who you are outside of that shame cycle and through the lens of compassion will take you further and farther and deeper than any other point or dollar sign could. I am going to be extremely financially wealthy in my life. This I know. This is just part of it, right? That's weird to say out loud. Only so I can help more. That's all this is going to be, to a greater platform, to have a greater reach, to broaden the strokes. And then, I'm going to have the Porsche GT3 RS, bro, for sure. Because I'll drive it better than you can. 100%. 100%. Well, no, I like going fast. But again, so like all of these things and pieces, right, of ourselves, like they're not bad or good, they just are. And how can we tweak and gain a broader perspective into them to maybe feel a little bit better about our lives? I said to my buddy, how much are you volunteering? How much are you helping aside from a dollar sign that your family needs? Right? How much do you care about people that aren't directly in your orbit? So just some food for thought. And yeah, dude, like I've seen some beautiful, I'm really stoked for the next, little while here. I'm feeling, a little scared, a little ashamed that it took me this long and some of the people that I've hurt, and can take accountability for that. And when I see them, I ran into a kid who I went to high school with and just kind of like apologized and said, hey man, I'm so sorry I was like that. And he understood it. He's just like, yeah, man, like I get it. I wasn't great either. And, that's really cool. And aside from the judgment piece, man, because like that's going to be, I think, an interesting thing for everybody is just how do we get back away from judgment into curiosity? Just ask some questions. So kind of wanted to give some updates. I don't really know what I'm supposed to be teaching here. I think I'll have a more fundamental understanding of it this next off shift. But in the meantime, I'm probably going to be posting quite a bit of videos. I got a couple hours of work here to do to get all that kind of out. I have a shit ton of videos, so I'm going to do that. Let me know if you have any questions or whatever. I'm on all social media. I think it's all Young Sammy Boy at this point. But I hope you have a great day. Just some thoughts from a dude. I don't have any major accolades or anything aside from I've lived a pretty fucking awesome life. I'm at a bunch of concerts. I'll be at Kitchen Dwellers. I'll be at Fish. All those things. You don't have to be who you think you have to be. that's a good place to stop.